Well, good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. My name is Stuart Floyd and I'm the International Admissions Manager from Bond University. I'm located here in Canada full-time and I work for the university and also with our official representatives like KOM consultants in working with students on the enrolment process and also going through the process of studying at Bond. A bit of background on myself. I'm actually a law graduate of Bond myself. I completed both my law degree and also my international relations degree at Bond about 5 or 6 years ago now. I've been working in the admissions office for around about 10 years in total, so quite a lot of experience in helping students make that transition from either their undergraduate degree to their graduate programs, but then also discovering post-secondary education for the first time as well. I've been here in Canada now about 3 years. I understand Canadians, I reckon, fairly well. I play hockey myself, curse winter, but also look forward to all the great winter sports, and then also love summer, as brief as it is here. I know today's been an absolutely beautiful day here in Toronto and the GTA, and it looks like it's going to be a great summer coming up. For tonight's seminar, basically we're going to probably break it down into a couple of different sections. To begin with, I'll go through and give a general rundown on the university, covering major topics and hopefully answering some of the big questions that a lot of students have about the university in general. I'll then open it up to the floor, and for those students who are logged on tonight or anyone who's logged on, it'd be great to get some questions from you and find out what it is you're really wanting to know about Bond, the program that we have, the programs that we have in all of our faculties, as well as any other general questions about Australia, admissions, enrolments, anything like that as well. KOM consultants are also logged on tonight, so they can probably help with some of the questions as well. They provide a fantastic service in helping students make that transition. Obviously, it's a big jump to move to the other side of the world and undertake tertiary education, post-secondary studies. And KOM consultants do an excellent job in helping you with all aspects of the application admissions process, but then also the pre-departure enrolment, making sure your housing's sorted, orientation and those sorts of things. So they are an official partner of the university and we're very happy to be working with them. They've been working with us now for a number of years and have sent us many very happy students. So let's start off by doing a general overview of the university, and I think it's also important that we go through and just talk about sort of Bond in general and also Australia. For many of you, this is the first time that you've sort of started looking at or maybe spoken to even an Australian. There are quite a few of us here in Canada. There's a great friendship between the two countries and a lot of similarities as well between our culture, our heritage, obviously being both ex-British colonies, but also just the general way of life, our love of the outdoors, our very relaxed, laid-back nature, and also our approach to sort of internationalisation. And education between the two countries is also very similar. Australia itself, I don't know the sort of the levels of sort of knowledge that most people have, but I'll take a pretty basic sort of knowledge. Basically, the country is a large island sitting in the South Pacific. It is a long way from anywhere, but also still very connected in terms of business and communications and those sorts of things. When I say a large island, I mean it's the same size as mainland USA. So a lot of people think that Ireland sort of being quite small, but no, it's basically traveling from the west coast to the east coast in Australia is the same as traveling from Los Angeles to New York in the US. It's that sort of similar size. The major difference, though, is that our population is only about 22 or 23 million people. And the majority of those people live in the southeast corner around the coast. Most of Australia is actually uninhabitable desert, so it's a great country to explore. As much as it's uninhabitable, it's also great to be a tourist there. Go and see things like Ayers Rock, go out to Kakadu National Park, and just see all the different places that there are. It's a very unique country. I'm sure many of you know about our great flora and fauna, things like our deadly spiders and snakes and sharks and all those fun things, but there's also some really cool animals and plant life there as well. And that's one of the things that sort of has struck me is one of the big differences between the two countries is just the colours and the landscape and those sorts of things are very different indeed. The climate is also very different. Coming into summer here now, we're obviously starting to see some really nice weather, but I know back in Australia, it's very nice all year round. In terms of climate, what you can typically expect on the Gold Coast, where the Bond University is located, essentially you're looking at sort of winter temperatures, very similar today actually, here in Toronto. So 22, 23 degrees, sunny, dry, warm, and that's winter. And then during the summer, it gets a little bit warmer, probably up to the 30, maybe 35 degrees on some really hot days. And typically what you'll find is it'll be much more humid. So you'll get afternoon rainstorms, and typically you'll also get sort of a few more cloudy days as well, but still great beach going weather. The rest of Australia is very mild as well. None of the cities, none of the major populated areas get any snow. Even in the coldest, sort of most southernmost points of Australia, even during winter, it's still around 5 to 10 degrees during the day at its coldest. So very similar to sort of Vancouver temperatures and climate. Very mild, very Mediterranean, what most people call it. So for you guys going to the Gold Coast, it's obviously a fantastic place to live and to study for 2 or more years. Amazing natural beauty in the area. You have the beaches there, which you can make use of all year round. As well as the hinterland area, wineries, great bush hiking, rainforest, all those sorts of things, all within 15-20 minutes of the university. So it is a great location to study, and the climate obviously helps that a lot. Bond University itself, we were set up about 25 years ago, back at the end of the 1980s, and we're Australia's first and still only fully private, not-for-profit institution. There are 39 universities in Australia. The other 38 are fully government funded and run. We're the only private institution. Saying that though, we are still fully accredited as a legal university degree granting institution, and all of our degrees are fully recognised throughout the world. We'll talk a bit more about that recognition in a moment with regards to Canada, especially some of the programs that you may be interested in, something like physiotherapy, law, and some of those other professional programs. Bond itself is, we would say, a small to medium-sized institution. At the moment, we're somewhere between 3,500 to 4,000 students in total. We only have the one campus on the Gold Coast in Australia, and we have trying to aim for about a 50-50 ratio between our international and domestic students. So out of those 3,500 to 4,000, we have somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 international students. We also teach both undergraduate and graduate programs, and so that total student number includes all of our students on campus. And we really do heavily recruit students from all over Australia and from all over the world. So the international population is very diverse. We have almost 80 countries represented this semester on campus, and no one country can represent more than about 5 to 8% of the international student body. So that means that it's not just all Canadians or Chinese or Indians, etc., who are at Bond. You'll find that there'll be a really great mix. Depending on what program you do, however, there may be more students from one particular country than others, and again we'll talk a bit about that more as we get into the law side of things and some of the other programs. Bond has a number of different faculties and programs within that. We have our Faculty of Law, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, encompassing 3 schools of Communication and Media, Humanities, so languages, philosophy, international studies, and also Counselling, Behaviour Management and the Social Sciences. We have our Faculty of Business, our Institute of Sustainable Development and Architecture, and our Faculty of Health Sciences and Medicine. While we do have a Faculty of Health Sciences and Medicine, I must point out that our medicine degree is only for Australian citizens or permanent residents. Unfortunately, we don't have any international places for our medicine program. In terms of the university as well, we have quite a vibrant student life. Because students move to the campus from all over the world, we don't have any online studies, so everyone who studies at Bond studies in classes and in person. We have a really strong clubs and societies and sort of community mentality, and so students get very involved in all of the different opportunities they have available to them. We have clubs and societies that range from things like drama society, debating, through to fundraising, so things like Amnesty International or Rotary. And then we also have other sports clubs and societies as well, so everything from cricket, netball, soccer, rugby, basketball. We did have an ice hockey team at one stage, of course all Canadians, but that sort of waxes and wanes depending on the type of students we have at Bond. There's lots of opportunities for you to start new clubs and societies and to really get involved, and we encourage that of all of our students there on campus. Our facilities we also take a lot of pride in as well. Being a private not-for-profit institution, all of the fees that come into the university stay within the university and are used to basically pay for some of the best facilities around pretty much anywhere in the world, so that you guys as the students have those to learn from and to use as part of your education. For example, our Institute of Sustainable Development, the building that we constructed for that school, is the only 6 Green Star rated education facility in Australia, and that basically means it's completely energy self-sufficient and very efficient. It's completely off-grid, and that building's actually won numerous international awards for design, sustainability and those sorts of things. For those of you studying a law program, we actually have our own legal skills centre where we've essentially built a number of law courts that are mirroring the Australian federal courts and actually get used as real courts when there's not classes in there. Then we also have another sort of other areas of negotiation rooms, client interviewing, and those sorts of things. So we really try and focus on the practical sort of in-person education at Bond, making sure that students have access to all of the top facilities that they would be using as if they were out in the workforce. In terms of accommodation and places that students can live, the Gold Coast is the cheapest major urban centre in Australia, so in terms of cost of living index in Australia. It's about the 6th largest urban centre or city in Australia, the other major cities obviously being Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, which is very close by. Brisbane's about an hour up the road by train or by car, Adelaide, Perth, and then the Gold Coast comes 6th. The Gold Coast has grown quite rapidly over the last 10 years or so. The population now around about 600,000 people or so. There's not so much a city or a downtown area, but it's more an elongated sort of region stretching along the beach just south of Brisbane. In terms of accommodation, we do have limited on-campus accommodation, but we do maintain that for our undergraduate students only, and those under the age of 25. We want to try and foster a lot of pastoral care, and typically graduate students have already had that undergraduate on-campus dorm experience, and so we encourage you then to live off-campus. But the great thing about Bond is that there's a number of off-campus options that are literally within 30 seconds walking distance of the campus. And right next door to campus you have the whole Market Square and Varsity Lakes development, which has been finished in the last 5 to 10 years. So you have a whole range of restaurants, banks, convenience stores, shops, pretty much everything you need to live very close by to campus without having to buy a car or do those sorts of things. So that's a general rundown of the university and also of the programs that we teach at Bond. Perhaps I'd like to now throw it over to the students that we have, or the people that we have joined in to this webinar, to maybe let me know what programs you're interested in studying, and that way then I can perhaps give you some more information about that. So I think there's a bit of a delay on here, so please jump in, and I'll go quiet for a few moments and then we'll talk a bit more about the programs that you're interested in. Okay, so I've had one student write in now interested in doing the grad law program, and obviously bringing that program back to Canada. This is a big program for us for Canadian students, and we've had a long history of having a large number of Canadians come down, study their law degree at Bond, and then return back to Canada. I also see that you've asked a question as to whether there are any scholarships for the law program. I'll address that in a moment, but let's maybe have a chat now about our law faculty. The law faculty at Bond is very highly regarded, both in Australia and internationally. Our program was set up in the early 1990s and immediately became the highest rated and the best regarded law school in Australia. When we started, we had a number of top professors and practicing legal professionals from all over Australia and the world who came to establish the law school. And really it was established or to be able to provide students with the education that the law profession was looking for, a very practical, very hands-on education to prepare them for legal practice. Throughout the last 20 to 25 years, we've really developed our legal education and become well known throughout the world. We participate in numerous legal competitions, so mooting, so mock trial and those sorts of things, and we're actually the most successful international law school in the world in those competitions. We've won the International Criminal Court competition in The Hague, as well as a number of other ones, beating universities like Harvard, London School of Economics, Yale, and other law schools. The program itself, we teach both a Bachelor of Laws, which is the undergraduate program for students who haven't completed a bachelor's degree, and then we also offer a Juris Doctor, which is the graduate entry law program. Typically in Australia, students will study law out of high school. It's very similar to the British model. Typically though, for Canadians, you've already got an undergraduate degree, and so you'll come across and do our Juris Doctor program. The compulsory subjects are essentially the same in both programs. However, the Juris Doctor program has 5 master's level electives, so they are graduate level elective programs. Students study 3 semesters per year at Bond, so we actually have a trimester as opposed to semester system. And essentially that means that our academic calendar mirrors the North American or the Canadian schedule. So essentially we have semesters commencing in September, we run through to December, January through to April, and May through to August. Students get 3 to 4 weeks off between each of the semesters. The other great thing is that you can commence your program at any time. So there's no advantage or disadvantage to starting your degree in any semester. It's really up to what works for you. We offer every subject every semester, so you can still complete your program in the required time within sort of that program. The law degree itself is 24 subjects or 24 courses. You complete 4 courses per semester, so therefore it's a 6-semester program. Typically that's 2 calendar years on, so already you're at an advantage to be able to actually complete your program at least 12 months quicker than what you would be doing here in Canada. As I mentioned, the program is made up of compulsory subjects, so 19, and then 5 law electives. Now we offer about 150 different electives for you to choose from, and you don't do those until your 4th, 5th and 6th semesters. So you've got a bit of time to choose and to talk to other students and find out what you want to do. As part of those electives, we also offer a number of courses in Canadian law taught by Canadian law professors and approved, or the syllabus has been approved, by the Canadian Law Society. And that's very important for those of you who are looking to return to Canada and to practice as lawyers here in Canada. I'm not sure if any of you have done any sort of research on the process of returning to Canada with a foreign law degree, but I'll give a bit of background on that now. Typically, if students graduate a law degree from a Canadian institution, that institution has had its degree recognised by the Law Society in its province, and so therefore graduates of that institution are then able to apply to the Law Society to enter the articling process and then obviously write their bar exams and gain admission to the bar in that province. However, being a foreign law school, we haven't had our program accredited by the Law Society in its entirety. However, for all foreign law students, when they return to Canada, they need to complete the equivalency process through the National Committee of Accreditation. They're essentially the gatekeepers for the legal profession that represent all of the law societies in Canada and ensure that foreign educated law students meet the requirements of the Law Society, but also have a similar sort of level of education to those coming out of Canadian universities. The NCA process is relatively straightforward. they look for 4 key things when they're doing their assessment of an application. So a foreign law graduate will apply to the NCA for what's called a certificate of qualification, and they'll be assessed essentially against 4 criteria. First is that they need to have undergraduate study in a discipline other than law of at least 2 years in duration, if not preferred a completed degree. If you're looking at doing graduate law studies at Bond, obviously you'll have that degree. Second, you need a qualifying law degree, and that is a common law degree, either a Bachelor of Laws or a Juris Doctor from a recognised jurisdiction. Australia and Canada have probably the 2 most similar common law legal jurisdictions in the world, and so Australian degrees are very highly regarded and meet this requirement. The third requirement is that you need to have a minimum of 55% grade in all of your law subjects. So they don't just want to see passes, they want to see that you've done well in all of your courses. If you have failed a subject, or if you haven't achieved the necessary grades, they may make you take that subject again at a Canadian school, or they may issue you with what's called a challenge exam, and that's where they'll send you the syllabus, you self-study, you come along, you write the exam, and it's a pass-fail basis. The fourth criteria when they're assessing your NCA application for your certificate of qualification is that you completed study in at least 10 or 11 key Canadian coursework areas. Now the great thing about studying in Australia is that 6 out of those 10 or 11 are actually already covered in the Australian syllabus and in the Australian education. The NCA accepts the Australian sort of law in that area as being equivalent to Canadian, so they'll automatically give you credit for those. The other 4 or 5 courses, however, are very important that they must be taken as Canadian courses, and these include Canadian criminal law, foundations of Canadian law, Canadian administrative law, and Canadian constitutional law. Typically, students studying a program overseas won't have completed those courses, and so therefore will either be required to take them at a Canadian school or be required to sit the challenge exams as I mentioned previously. Now, going back to what I mentioned before about Bond and offering the Canadian courses, we actually offer all of those required courses at Bond that you can take as electives as part of your 2-year program. We are actually the only law school outside of Canada that actually has approval to teach those courses that match the syllabus of the Canadian required courses. So what this means is that you can then, as long as you've got your undergraduate degree, completed your law degree, have achieved the right grades, and taken those courses as electives, you then have met all the requirements of the Canadian NCA. You should be issued your certificate of qualification without any further study or exams, and then be allowed to go and apply for the articling process and the bar exams as if you'd walked out of a Canadian institution. So this is obviously fantastic for Bond students. We've been offering those Canadian subjects now for a number of years. We've been offering all of the Canadian required subjects now for about coming up on almost 2 years now. We've had several graduates. Of those who we've been in touch with since they've returned to Canada, we've had a 100% success rate with those students applying to the NCA and receiving their certificate of qualification without any further study, exams or anything like that, and they move straight into the articling process. So as you can see, this is a fantastic thing for you guys as Canadians wanting to come back to Bond. Not only are you completing your law degree in only 2 years, but it's a qualification that will allow you to both practice in Australia. It is an Australian law degree, but it will also allow you to come back to Canada and apply for admission to the bar here as well. I must point out, huge asterisk and caveat here, that every application to the NCA is assessed individually and upon its merits. We have no control over sort of what they decide in terms of students coming through and how they assess them. It is very much done on an individual basis, and they control whether or not they issue the certificate of qualification. We, however, as an institution will always work very hard to ensure that our programs, our courses, our staff meet their requirements, and so that you have the best opportunity to get through that process as smoothly and as quickly as possible. The entire NCA process takes about 2 to 4 months to get the assessment completed once you've returned to Canada. From there, if you get your certificate of qualification, you're then able to apply for the articling process. If you have to take exams, let's say you choose not to take the Canadian courses, etc., then it may take longer to then write the challenge exams. I point that out as a note just because with students at Bond you only have 5 electives, and even though there's only 4 Canadian courses, one of those courses is a double subject. So that means therefore that you actually have to take 2 of your electives to cover that 1 Canadian course. If you do choose to do all of that, what that means is that you have all of your electives taken up. So if you want to do an exchange or say family law or one of those other ones, you don't have any space in your degree. So some students will choose perhaps only 2 or 3 of the Canadian courses to allow them some other flexibility, essentially controlling their own NCA process. But that's up for you to have a look at. Unfortunately, at present, we don't have any scholarships for international students coming into our law school. You'll see on our website there are some international student scholarships available. However, these are not offered by the law faculty, so applications won't be accepted for those. I am working on a proposal at the moment to the law faculty to try and change this. However, nothing's been finalised, so at this stage there are no scholarships available. Now I see there's been a number of comments that have popped up, and I do apologise for ranting and rambling on a little bit here, but that's important information to get across. So let's have a look at some of the questions that have now come through. Okay, so we have a student who's interested in physiotherapy. We'll talk a bit about that in a moment. We also have a question in regards to law in the USA. Definitely the law program is acknowledged in the USA. We do have not registration but accreditation for both the California and the New York Bar Associations, and so there is a streamlined process there. For the other states, it's very much done on an individual case-by-case basis. So you would really need to check with the law profession in your state as to what they regard and what they require as meeting the requirements of their legal practitioner. Usually, however, there's usually not much you have to do extra. It may mean taking a few exams or doing a little bit of further study, but in our experience for US students, there hasn't been too much that they've needed to do to get accredited or be able to practice in the US in their state. Okay. We've had a question about how many Canadian law classes are taught. I think I've just mentioned that. So we teach the 4 specifically required Canadian courses, as well as a few other electives in general areas. Okay. There's been a question here about the reputation of Bond's law degree within Canadian law firms. That's a very good question, and it's good that you guys are thinking about that. Bond has an excellent reputation amongst law firms in Canada. As an international firm, as an international university, it's obviously been harder for us to establish a brand and a name within the firms, especially when there's such good law schools here in Canada. However, we've had probably now close to 600 graduates from our law school, Canadian graduates, so Canadian students who have gone to Bond and then returned to Canada over the last 10 years. So that's a huge number of law grads, Canadians, who are now working in Canadian firms, Canadian government offices, as well as businesses as in-house lawyers and clerks and those sorts of things. So that means that we have established a very strong branding amongst a number of firms. We also have a very strong alumni network. And those alumni are now really getting into positions where they're now hiring fellow Bond graduates and new graduates coming through. The other great thing is we do a lot of work with students and with law firms through our Career Development Centre. So we provide opportunities for students to work in Australia, as well as to help them establish their resume, make connections with Canadian firms. And our Career Development Centre actually travels to Canada twice a year, along with the Dean of our law faculty, to meet with law firms, recruiting staff, senior partners, to talk about Bond, our graduates, our success, so that we are very much a known entity when it comes around time to apply for you guys to do articling positions and those sorts of things. We're also looking over the next couple of years at getting involved in the summer articling programs, and this year I know we have a number of students who are coming back in August and September who are graduating, who have got interviews and are setting up programs through the Canadian firms. So there's a large connection there, and I'd be happy to connect anyone who's interested through KOM Consultants with some of our alumni who are working back here in Canada, so you can talk to them about their experience with finding work and those sides of things. Obviously, the market is quite difficult at the moment to find a job, even for Canadian graduates, but what we're finding is our students have the right mix of international experience, of usually the ambition and the drive, and also the connections. They work very hard on building connections with lawyers before they leave and while they're in study, so that when they come back they have those opportunities to exploit those connections, and that's very much how the hiring is done these days. Excellent. So I've just answered also the questions: is it difficult for Canadian grads to secure articling back in Canada? Hopefully that's answered that question. And then another question: I hear law firms in Canada give Canadian law school grads preference regarding articling. Look, that is true to an extent. What we find is that some, especially of the larger law firms, so the big Canadian firms, will obviously have their own preferences in terms of hiring. So U of T, London, UWO, places like that, Western, those sorts of things. However, our bond graduates, again, are well known, and you're going to find that anywhere. And if you come out of Queens and you're going to a law firm that's predominantly U of T grads, then even Queens students are going to find it difficult to get a job there. What we're finding, the majority of our students are finding success in finding articling positions in smaller to mid-tier firms, where they're still able to get a lot of experience and a lot of great exposure to great opportunities. Typically though, our students are actually enjoying those opportunities more than the big scale firms, where realistically there are very, very few positions to begin with anyway. Once they've then got a year or two experience at the smaller to mid-tier firms, they're then applying for larger positions and larger firms. And our graduates have actually been very successful with that. A big international firm, Gowlings, last year had, 2 years ago now, had 7 positions available to graduate students, and 2 of those positions were filled by bond graduates. I have other stories of other students who did 12 to 18 months working in a small provincial law firm, and then was able to obtain one of only 2 national positions available with Ogilvy Renault, again a huge international firm. So there's a lot of success there, and we have a lot of students who have done very, very well, and it really depends on where you want to head and the type of law that you want to study. Excellent. Okay, so we've covered a lot of information on law there. If there's any other questions, I might just leave it a minute just in case students have just some last questions about the law program. If not, I'll then move on to the physiotherapy degree to have a chat about that as well. So please, if anyone has any questions about the law program that I haven't covered so far, please ask them now. Okay, so I've just had a question about the law program start with the trimester system. Do students get any holidays? As I mentioned before, you usually have 3 to 4 weeks vacation between each semester. So September, usually the 2nd week of September to the 3rd week of December, you get 4 weeks off over Christmas, start again about the 2nd or 3rd week of January and go through till the middle of April. You then have 3 weeks off over April, May, and then you start again the 2nd week of May and go through to about the 3rd week of August. So our May semester is actually commencing next week. So that means that you have 3 14-week semesters per year and 10 weeks of vacation. Again, you can commence the law program and most of our degrees, except for physiotherapy, in every semester. So the law program has an intake in September, January and May. The great thing is also we don't have any application deadlines, so you can apply at any time for any upcoming semester, and this is again for the law program. I encourage you to work with KOM consultants on that because they will help you through the entire application process, help you get your documents together. Usually we suggest that you have your application submitted at least 2 months before the commencement of a semester to allow us time to be able to assess your application, provide you with an offer, and then help you get your student visa, accommodation and those sorts of things. However, that's not a hard deadline, and if you do decide to start in an upcoming semester, we can work with that as well. Great. So I think we might now move on to the physiotherapy program and have a bit of a chat about that. So we do at Bond offer a Doctor of Physiotherapy degree. The degree is a 2-year degree in duration, so 6 semesters, same as the JD Law program. Importantly, there is only one intake per year, which is our May semester. So it's a bit of a different start time to other institutions. We only have one intake in the May semester, and that's for the Doctor of Physiotherapy program only. The application period is also quite set, so applications, I believe, have just opened or will be opening soon for the 2014 intake. The 2013 students are just about to start next week in the first semester. In terms of the application process, again, KOM consultants have all the information and can assist you with that, so I encourage you to get in touch with them and they'll help you through the application process. The program itself, the Doctor of Physiotherapy, is a very, again, like most of our other programs, intense sort of practical program. So throughout the 6 semesters you are actually involved in a range of sort of practical clinical work in all areas of the clinical work. So not only will you be working in sort of small private one-on-one, there'll also be hospital work and other clinics as well. So you really do get a lot of clinical experience throughout your entire degree. The program was actually based on the McMaster University model and curriculum. We essentially established that McMaster was one of the top physiotherapy universities in the world, and so we did actually work with their curriculum developers to help develop our program so that it can also be one of the best programs available. The great offset for that is that the students coming out of our Bond program have automatic recognition back here in Canada, especially in Ontario. So students graduating the Bond Doctor of Physiotherapy program are treated just like they've come out of McMaster or somewhere else offering physio. And essentially then you just have to write the basically the bar exam or the admission exam to the College of Physiotherapists, and you're able to practice here in Canada. In Australia it's also a fully recognised qualification, so you are able to then also stay and work in Australia as well as a physiotherapist, and there's recognition in a number of other countries and areas around the world. It is a Doctor of Physiotherapy, so it is considered a higher level than just a master's qualification. There is no research component to it, but the teaching and the clinical hours are what separate it from a master's program to being a full doctorate. So it is a Doctor of Physiotherapy. Those of you interested in physiotherapy, do you have any specific questions about the program? Okay, so just looking through, for the student interested in physiotherapy, there was a question there about admissions. So I've talked about the starting date and also the time for application. It's important also that there's a number of prerequisite courses that must be completed in order to gain admissions to the physiotherapy program. These are typically a number of semesters of human anatomy, biology, physiology, etc. There's also one subject that is usually a difficult one for Canadian students, especially in most kinesiology programs, etc., and that is exercise prescription. In Australia, that's actually a mandatory course for students studying a kinesiology undergraduate. However, here in Canada it's usually taken as an elective. So it's important that if you're still in your program that you try and make room to take that exercise prescription subject. It is a prerequisite for our Bond Doctor of Physiotherapy program. Admissions are first based on your GPA from your undergraduate studies. Typically we're looking for students to be somewhere in the 3 to 3.5 on a 4.0 scale. Obviously that fluctuates depending on your institution's overall scale. However, once the student then has been assessed as being academically sort of in the right area, the right ballpark, we'll then organise interviews which are done either over phone or Skype. And then from there, during that interview, there'll be questions asked, and essentially it's an opportunity for us to find out whether you're the right fit for our program. Once the interviews are completed, they'll then look at all of your grades, your work experience, and everything else you've submitted in your application with your interview, and then from there they'll make their offers. Usually they do 2 rounds of offers. The first round usually comes out end of December, early January, and students will be asked to commit to starting in the program in the May pretty much straight away. From there, any places that are not accepted, or if there's any other applications that are stand out, will then make offers in the second round. Okay, I've just had a question here about admissions from Carly. If you can please just be a bit more specific about which program. The admissions for each program are slightly different, so if you can just indicate which program, that would be great. Good luck with the hockey playoffs. Thanks very much, and we look forward to receiving your application through KOM. Fantastic. Thanks for that, Carly. If you do have any other questions, again, KOM consultants will have all the information. They have a number of students actually starting this semester in the physiotherapy program, so they're definitely experts at helping students through the application process. Great. Are there any other questions out there? Is there any information that students would like to know about the programs, about the university in general? Even Australia, you're talking to a real live Aussie here, so more than happy to answer any of your questions or curiosities about the country. It is a great experience. As I mentioned, I moved here from Australia 3 years ago, and for me it's been a very easy transition, and I think that's due a lot to the similarities between Canada and Australia. What I've really noticed though is I've still had a fantastic international experience, and I know all the students I talk to pretty much have the opinion that they still get to have this awesome international study and living experience, but in an environment that's very comfortable, very similar to home, in all the right ways, so that they don't feel too out of place or don't have that culture shock that you might experience going somewhere where the language is different and those sorts of things. So to those of you considering study overseas, I really encourage you to do it. It's very much an excellent choice both for your career and also for your personal growth. And the more and more employers I'm talking to at the moment are noting that they're hiring students because of their international experience, because of what they've been able to do outside of the norm and above and over what most students would typically do in the typical sort of cookie cutter sort of degree obtaining process. So I really encourage you to look at all of your options, but definitely studying somewhere like Australia and doing your study there is going to give you a great opportunity to go somewhere that most people don't get the opportunity to go during their lifetime. Great, so we'll leave the floor open for questions for a few more minutes, but if no one's got any more questions, then we might end the seminar there. Again, as has been mentioned, there will be this webinar has been recorded and will be online for you to come back and view at any time. And again, I cannot speak highly enough of KOM's involvement with Bond and all the information that they can provide. As you've just seen there, definitely I'd recommend joining their Facebook and being able to connect with them on a regular basis. So any last questions, please send those through now. Okay, we've just had a question here in regards to medicine. You've actually just joined the program. Unfortunately, I mentioned it actually at the top of the program, that we actually, while we do have a medicine faculty at Bond, our degree is only for Australian citizens or Australian permanent residents. We actually don't have the medicine program available to international students, so I do apologise about that. If you have a chat to KOM though, there's a number of other Australian universities who do have medicine programs that accept international students, and they'll be able to help you with admissions for those. Excellent. So I think that's everyone and all questions answered there. If anyone has any further questions, again, please contact KOM. But otherwise, I'd like to thank you for your attendance tonight and hope that that information has been helpful for you. And I wish you all the very best in your endeavours through international education and future studies. I look forward to seeing you down at the Bond campus in the very near future. Thanks very much and have a great night.